meeting our customers where they are and where their needs are, and finding a path to be relevant in their lives, particularly when you start to see banking and transactions interwoven in between individuals' day-to-day lives. It's showing up when they want us to be versus having them come to a branch in order to conduct a transaction with them. Well, we recognize that we're not going to be able to do it all on our own, and the speed in which the fintech providers and the new entrants into the space are moving are at a pace that traditional banks haven't been able to keep up with. Yet we both have a tremendous amount that we can learn from each other and benefit from each other. So we at Citi have adopted a theory called fintegration, which is bringing the best of the fintechs to the ecosystem in service to our customer needs. And it's through that path and through that pace that we see the opportunity to actually meet the customer requirements, whether it's a business or it's a new consumer, and also the developer community. Over the last year, we've started to enter a space recognizing that the need for us to innovate is not going to happen by ourselves. And so how do we develop a platform where the developer community can come and can innovate with us in order to bring new solutions to the market? There are lots of ways. I mean, part of being a startup is taking risk and running fast and failing cheaply and learning along the way. And what you tend to find in some of the traditional institutions, whether it's a bank or just industries that have been around for centuries, is that their appetite for risk taking isn't as high as some of the startups. Now, when you're dealing with people's finances and money, you want to be very thoughtful about where you take risk and when you take risk. So sometimes it's incremental and small. But one of the biggest philosophies, and I think the differentiator of a lot of these startups, is they are heavily customer-centric. And so it's not just in words, it's in practice. So understanding what the customer needs are, getting out there into the market and speaking with them, that's an attribute and a philosophy that we too have adopted. When we first got started at Citi Fintech, we met with over 2,500 different customers just to hear their narrative of what they expected of us, not for just the bank of tomorrow, but for the bank of today. And over the course of the last 18 months, we have made it part of our ritual in order meeting with customers every 2 weeks, testing our theories, testing our solutions, and testing the products that we're going to bring to market. For me, that's probably one of the big, I think, shifts in the mindset and the way that we look at developing products in general in the banking sector. Well, I mean, one of the big reasons of how the institutional banks and the fintechs are different are how they're regulated, and are there frameworks that prohibit us from being innovative? I think there's some truth to that. I mean, there's truth to being in a highly regulated environment and ensuring that we're complying by the policies and the rules, but also meeting the customer needs. But I think where we're heading as a society, and I think as a collective consortium of institutions as well as startups, is the fact is, how do we start to test and how do we rethink, what oversight and policies and controls are? So what I mean by that is, in our world, we've been able to differentiate between what is an opinion, what's in a policy versus what's a law. I mean, when you've been around for 200 years, something that you thought was law was actually opinion over 100 years ago. And so how do we start to deconstruct in the areas where have governed our behaviors and our processes over the years, but perhaps may have been a little bit traditional in its sense and hasn't evolved with the time. So yes, there's some truth to that. We're always going to keep our customers' safety and privacy secure, but at the end of the day, we also have to challenge ourselves to think like a startup. I think fintechs are able to appease the customer demands much more quickly, and that is about getting out in front of it and deeply understanding it. The challenges that the fintechs are having on are a couple of levels. One is scale, particularly when you start to move from a national-based society to a global society. Customer base, so it's very hard to build a customer brand or a consumer brand in this day and age without a lot of equity and a lot of capital. And so their ability to do that is going to come through the partnerships with the banks. I think what banks bring to the table and what traditional institutions bring to the table are the large customer bases, and also I think a deep knowledge set in the industry itself and how it's governed, and how to operate in a world where you are protecting the business that you're representing. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We definitely believe that there's a partner, buy, build scenario, which is there's like any company identifying what's your core competency and protecting that is important. That being said, when we want to test different partners, either internally or externally, there has to be a path forward. I think one of the barriers collectively to our overall success is understanding what are the bounded constraints and where we can test and where we can't. You're seeing a lot of activity, whether it's in Singapore or it's in the UK, or what they call regulatory sandboxes, of where the incumbents and the challengers can come together and can innovate on an idea, whether it's in a production environment or testing environment. In the US, we're trying to find our path forward as well to give us the opportunity, I think, to not just test and learn, to figure out what the right solutions are before we fully bring them to market.